which is the best podcast app for you? With options from YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and third parties, I'm going to list the best apps in multiple categories, including the best to support your favorite creators, the best for video, which have podcasting 2.0 features like live streaming and comments, which has the best show notes and chapter features, and the #1 overall podcast app that's available for all platforms. And no, it's not from one of the big names. So whether you're just getting into podcasts or you're a power listener and want to have the most features, I'll share the app that's perfect for you. All right, this first app is on both platforms, iPhone and Android. And if you're looking for the best option for video, I would actually go with YouTube Music. Now, I know it might seem like for video, you should go to the main YouTube app, but if your goal is actually to watch and listen to podcasts, I actually really like the YouTube Music experience over the main YouTube app. For instance, let's say you're watching a podcast and you want to switch to the audio-only version. You can just tap audio right here and the video will stop playing. Tap video and you're back to watching. To do that in the main YouTube app, there's not really an audio-only toggle here. You can swipe down and try to go home, but then it's probably going to play in picture-in-picture. So I actually like that audio-video toggle there at the top. Also, you can like and comment on the podcast episode right here in the YouTube Music app. You don't have to go over to the main one. And because YouTube Music is kind of queue-based, you can go to the Up Next queue and actually see what episodes are going to play next, choose whether you want to autoplay it, and rearrange the order of episodes. Again, all of this is much easier than managing an Up Next queue in YouTube. Also, if you wanted to share a moment for the podcast, you can tap the share button, turn on that toggle, and now when you copy or share this link, when someone clicks it, they'll be brought to that same moment in the episode. And finally, when you go to the details here in YouTube Music, the podcast show notes feel more show notes-like. It just feels like a regular podcast player as opposed to a YouTube video. But YouTube Music doesn't have everything. For instance, creators can offer paid subscriptions like they do in Apple Podcasts and Spotify for bonus content or ad-free episodes. Viewers or listeners would have to go to another website and sign up for that, like a Memberful or Patreon account. Also, YouTube Music doesn't surface the transcription, even though transcriptions are often available on the YouTube website, and other podcast apps readily show transcriptions, and we'll get to more of that in a second. And finally, while you can create playlists for things like podcast episodes, it's a little more cumbersome because there's also a bunch of music here in this app, not just podcasts. So who is YouTube Music for? Well, if you want a free app that has great audio and video features, you might find yourself watching more podcasts than listening. And especially if you're on Android, it is one of the best free options that you can use, and it's come a long way adding podcast-specific features. Now, #2, we have to talk about Apple Podcasts. It's still one of the most popular podcast listening apps, but of course it doesn't have a stock app on Android. Now, Apple actually did release Podcast Public website, so you can go to podcast.apple.com and actually use that website almost like a quasi-podcast player on any Android phone or on the desktop, Windows or Mac. You can even sign in so you can keep track of shows that you follow and new episodes, but you can't download episodes locally and it doesn't have any kind of Up Next queue. So it's definitely a subpar experience on Android. But if you're on iPhone, Apple Podcasts is one of the nicest designed apps. Episode artwork is shown really large, and a lot of shows take advantage of using that beautiful artwork. Some shows, like my podcast, might even have special art for the show page that's not just a square image. It actually takes up the whole page. And what's great for creators and for those who want to support podcasts or get ad-free content, you can actually offer subscriptions directly in Apple Podcasts. And in my experience, I get 2 times more people signing up directly here than on other platforms like Patreon or Memberful. Plus, also that episode artwork is shown in your episode listing, and you can have bonus content here in the same show as the main content. And if someone supports the show, they'll switch to the ad-free and then get access to bonus episodes automatically. Plus, if someone's not subscribed, it's easy to do and they get prompted if they want to listen to an episode. Also, Apple Podcasts is unique in that it transcribes every podcast episode, whether the creator uploads a transcript or not. So any episode that you play across any podcast here in Apple Podcast, you get that full transcription. And when it comes to design, it's one of the nicest transcription that follows along with the audio that you'll find in any podcast app. Plus, they have this really cool feature where if you want to share a timestamp, so a link goes directly to this point in an episode, you can tap and hold on a paragraph here in the transcript, and then tap Share from Timestamp, and that link will send someone to start listening exactly where you shared. And if you upload your own transcript, like if you got it from Riverside, you actually get speaker labels right on top of whenever it changes speakers. But Apple Podcasts is not great for video. If a creator wants to offer video on Apple Podcasts, they basically need to have 2 shows. Label one that's just audio and one that's video. And while you can actually watch video directly here in Apple Podcasts, you can't really switch between audio and video easily like YouTube Music had the audio video toggle at the top. And if you ever wanted to download the audio only version to save some space, you have to follow a second show here in Apple Podcasts. So video is pretty cumbersome here on the app. Of course, the app is only available on Apple devices, which is a negative. And I also find that show notes are formatted kind of strangely. It misses some paragraph breaks and spacing. Most other apps display show notes with better formatting, so that's not great. And finally, the Up Next queue, which you can find here, can be a little wonky. It's hard to move stuff around, and sometimes it will have continue playing versus Up Next queue. So the Up Next queue has a ways to go also. But who should use Apple Podcasts? Well, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you have an iPad, iPhone, and Mac, your playback syncs, all the shows you follow syncs, and it's a great free app. Design is top-notch, and if you really love those transcripts, Apple Podcasts is going to have the best experience. Now, when it comes to best all-in-one video, audio, both for listeners and creators, Spotify does a really good job. When it comes to discovery, Spotify is second to none. You can go to the podcast tab here on home, or you can also go to the search tab, and you'll actually see clips, not only from musicians, but also of podcasts in both places. So when it comes to having your show discovered by new audience members, being on Spotify is a big deal. Plus, creators like myself, we can host our podcast anywhere. Like I host my audio version on Transistor, but the video I can actually upload to Spotify for creators separately. Then someone can actually play an episode, and if they prefer, they can just lock their screen and listening to the audio version only. Also, a lot of people who use Spotify for music, they can just listen to their podcast and just use one app for both. Plus, Spotify will actually generate short clips of engaging moments of your show automatically. I didn't make this clip. This is something Spotify just did, just because I uploaded the video to Spotify for Creators, which is great. Spotify does also offer transcriptions. If you scroll down, you'll see the read along. It's not bad. It's not the same experience as Apple Podcasts. I find that to be designed a little better, but you do get the transcripts here in Spotify. There's also nice sharing tools here in Spotify, so when you hit the share button, you can share the transcript, and you can also have nicely designed cards like for Instagram stories, and if you want to share from a timestamp, you can just toggle this on and share a specific moment from a show as well. So great sharing tools. Also, if you're a creator, Spotify has lots of tools to monetize even at smaller sizes. So you can have the Spotify Partner Program. You can also offer exclusive content or early access and ad-free to fans using the built-in subscriptions feature. And like I mentioned, no matter where you host your show, you can actually upload a video or clips per episode, allowing you to have both audio and video, nice show notes, transcript, and even upload a custom thumbnail which shows up in the Spotify app. And you can see for my show, I'll use the same thumbnail here in Spotify that I do on YouTube. Now, the only thing about Spotify is it doesn't have easy up next management, so I'm not really sure what's going to be playing next, and there's no quick way to say, play the next episode of this podcast, or create a queue of all my newest episodes. And it is a little busy having both music and podcasts in one place. The Discover page is going to show random videos, not just from podcasts, but just music artists, music videos. And there's even an infinite scrolling feed that's almost like TikTok right here in Spotify. So there's a lot going on in the Spotify app, but it is good for discovery and gives viewers and listeners options for consuming their favorite shows. So who should use Spotify for podcasts? Well, if you already subscribe to Spotify for music and you want to simplify everything to one app, that's a great option. And if your favorite shows offer their content through subscriptions directly in Spotify, it might be the ideal place for you to listen and watch your favorite shows. So what about the best app for Podcasting 2.0 features? And what even is Podcasting 2.0? Podcasting 2.0 refers to features that you can find in RSS feeds from creators and apps can surface, like community comments, live streaming from a podcast, and more. And the best app for that is called Fountain. You'll see Fountain here on Android and here on the iPhone. Now, Fountain is for power podcasting users. When you open the app, the first thing you'll actually see is a community page. Here you can see comments, like, and interact with different episodes, and also interact with other listeners from shows that you follow. And that is a really unique feature when it comes to podcast apps, because usually that community with commenting, that can be difficult to integrate and figure out within a show. But when it comes to just being a podcast app, Fountain has all those features too. You can listen to a show, you get all the show notes and links, formatted pretty nicely. The now playing screen is actually pretty feature-packed. It'll show you the episode artwork. It'll also show custom chapter artwork. It has a great Up Next queue feature, which you can manage here. And also unique with Fountain, you can actually clip a portion of the episode. It has a whole editor for that. So if you want to download a little video clip and then share it on Threads or Blue Sky, you can do all of that within Fountain. Now, unfortunately, there is transcript support, but Fountain really wants you to pay for that. So that's a feature you'll get in Spotify and Apple Podcasts for free. So kind of a bummer you have to pay for it here. But Fountain also offers lots of settings per podcast, where to put it in the queue, auto download, and more. But when it comes to cons, it can be very busy, and opening to this feed of comments might not be what you want in a podcast app. It'd almost be nicer if you could choose to open it on the library section and just see a list of your shows. Plus, the design is pretty utilitarian, not as nicely designed as Apple Podcasts. It also doesn't support video, so even creators who have a podcast with video, like MacBreak Weekly here, this is their video RSS feed, you can watch it here in the Fountain app. So the Fountain app is for a pretty niche audience, but if you're listening to podcasts on the bleeding edge of podcasting 2.0, doing things like live streaming and take advantage of that community features, it might be the app for you. Plus, it is a free app for Android and iPhone, so you can try it and see how you like it. And finally, when it comes to the best overall podcast app for both platforms, iPhone and Android, I have to give it to Pocket Casts. It's available on both platforms, and it is simply the best overall podcast listening app. Not only does it have a nice design with plenty of customizable features, maybe you want a list view or make the icons larger, you can do that. It'll even show you the play progress for episodes using that little circle next to the play icon. That's pretty sweet. It pulls in ratings, and if a podcast has a way to support, there's a little icon there which brings you right over to the page where you can support that show for bonus content and ad-free episodes. Also, the queue management in Pocket Casts is second to none. Yes, you can reorder the queue, and it's easily accessible. So when you're listening to an episode, here's what it looks like, the now playing screen. You can swipe over and see the show notes, swipe again to see the chapters for that episode, and swipe up and you get that queue. Love that. But it also has a great option for when a podcast releases a new episode, you can say to add it to my up next queue, but then also say add it to the top of the queue. You get that much granular control. You can also choose to skip the first few minutes of a podcast if you know there's always ads, and also skip the last few minutes if there's post-roll ads too. It has great search, great bookmarking features for episodes. It does support video if you want to watch video podcasts there. And if you go to the app settings, there's so many customizable options, like setting the skip forward button to 3 minutes, which if you listen to shows with a lot of ads, you'll know that's very appreciated. The skip back, and you can really customize your listening and viewing experience. Now, the only negative I can think of is for all the features, it is a paid application. It is $10 a month or $100 a year. If you're a big podcast listener, I do think it's well worth it, but you do need to know it's not completely free. Who is Pocket Cast for? Frankly, I think it's anyone who's listening to a lot of shows, wants lots of control over their up next queue with customizations and options, plus a nicely designed app that works on both iPhone and Android. It is simply the best overall, and I've been using it for years. I'll put links to all the apps I talked about in the video description below. And if you're a podcast creator and wondering how you can be on all these platforms doing video and audio, well, I'm a solo creator too, and I release a weekly podcast on technology, and I record and edit and do everything using Riverside. Those AI tools allow me to publish those weekly episodes fast, even with multiple guests, and I can upload that video to YouTube, to Spotify, and that audio to my RSS host. If you want to see my entire behind-the-scenes process of creating a weekly podcast, check out my video on that right up here. And if you're looking to add video to your podcast, I can help you with gear for all budget levels. You can check a video out up here, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button before you go. And if I missed a podcast app that's your favorite or you think is better than all of these, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.